So the other day I put out a video on the changing the transaxle oil in the 1445 and I had a request to do a mowing video, and I got to thinking about it. Since the mower deck was off, I figured I would go ahead and do a hooking up the mower deck, because it's not necessarily a hard process, but there is an order to it that makes it a lot easier, and there's a couple things, a couple tips that I've learned over the years. And then I would do a mowing video. So we're going to hook the deck up, and then we're going to go mow a little bit. I mentioned that video that I need to change the gearbox out, because you can see this gearbox is leaking on this deck based on all that grease and everything there. I have decided, just because we got quite a bit of rain the other day, I need to get to mowing, and I'll come back and mow it or change the gearbox later. I've already checked the gear oil and stuff in this thing, and it's fine. So these decks hook up in 4 places, 2 in the rear. So those hangers right there, each one of these hangers has a corresponding hole to the height. So that is there. And then you have the front hangers, or the front connections right there. And that goes in these front mounts, like so. Now, to determine the height of the deck, there are 2 adjustments that can be made. They are this diagram right here, which associates itself with this mounting tab or bracket, whatever you want to call it. And then also those brackets that the back lift arms attached to. So we're going to be mowing at 3.5 inches. So this is A, B, C. If you can see that, A, B, C. And then we are going to be mowing at 3.5 inches. So we're in the back lower part of B, which corresponds to 3.5 inches. So on the front side of the back mounts, so back here, we need to be 2 down, 1 back. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to hook it right into there. And that'll give us our 3.5 inch height that we want for this deck. Now, this is a pretty easy process. Couple things I have learned: when you take the deck off, make sure that you put both rear gauge wheels down. Now, I will say that the 3rd or the 4th gauge wheel over here on this side, that is a bolt-on addition to some decks. Not all decks, but some decks. So some decks do not have that 4th or the 2nd rear caster. That is just something to know. But put those down as far as they will go. That way the deck is more or less just sitting on the ground. Makes it a whole lot easier. Plus, it gets the rear of the deck up high enough that you were able to hook these into the slots without having to lift up the deck. Second thing I would do before you push the deck back to mount the lift arms, make sure you take the drive shaft and put the drive shaft up on the drive axle. You don't have to do that. It just makes it a lot easier. Once you get the deck mounted and you haven't hooked up the drive shaft first, it creates a little bit of a tight space that you kind of have to work the drive shaft around to get it up over the axle, the front axle of the machine. So it's just always easier. I stop a little bit in front of the deck like I've done here. And when I stop, I will then put the drive shaft up on the axle, and then I will push the deck. Another reason to have your rear casters down all the way. I will then push the deck back into the mounts. So we can go ahead and I'm going to see if I can do this one-handed, or one-footed, I guess. And so these pins, these are extremely hard pins. I would encourage you not to go down to the hardware store and grab pins for the front of this deck, because if you do, chances are you're probably going to be very disappointed. And they're not going to last very long. So I'm trying to do this one-handed. There we go. So now what we can do, now I obviously got that just kind of set perfectly when I pulled up. But now what we're going to do is we're just going to put those front arms into float. Because remember, the front cylinders are single axing cylinders. So we're going to put those arms into float. That means that this front arm over here is just going to float down a little bit over time. I'm going to continue to push the deck back a little bit, and then maybe help this down some. Just kind of line it up as we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get, oops, and I passed it. Go figure. Really can't do this one-handed. All right, let's try this again. So, like I said, these cylinders are single acting, so you can move them with your hands as long as they are in float. So then we can just take and pop that in there. Now, what we're left with is we have to connect the back. So once again, decide where we want it. So second one down in the front, second one back. We're just gonna, and like I said, with these gauge wheels down, makes it really easy to pop in there. Same thing here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a washer and a spring pin, throw in there. You cannot use just a spring pin. It will not last. You have to have a washer on there. And you also need a decent sized spring pin or clip or whatever you want to call it. Because if you do not, it will not stay. Okay, there we go. Now, what we have to do is we have to lift it up and lift the gauge wheels up in the rear, the caster wheels up in the rear, and hook the drive shaft up. So, almost forgot that part. So, we'll just come in here, just like any other mower drive shaft. Just like that. Okay, so mower deck is hooked up. I'll lift it up. I have been guilty before of leaving the rear caster wheels down, forgetting to do that. You get a horrible cut because basically the front of your deck is lower than the back, or yeah, the front of your deck is lower than the back of your deck. And that's not a good deal. So everything should be set up and be ready to mow. So I'll get it warmed up and we will get busy mowing.